Hi, my name is Belma, and today I will be showing you a modern way of creating a traditional Bosnian dish known as pita. I know that pita is also a type of bread here, but this is a different type of dish. It is known as a doughy pie dish with different filling options. And today we will be making zeljanica, which is the spinach and cheese filling or filled pita. Is my favorite because obviously spinach is a good source of iron and is simple and a good way to get some greens into your meals. I grew up making this with my mom in the traditional way, but today, like I said, I will show you an easier way of replicating the same dish that will take half the amount of time it does making the dough from the traditional way. So I grew up having my mom make the dough from scratch, but luckily there's now prepared dough sheets that gives you the same end results and cuts your time in half. So quickly I'll just go over what you need. You will need the puff pastry sheets or fila dough. There's two options. This is the Pepperidge Farm, and these are in your freezer aisle, typically where your frozen pies and desserts are, oddly enough. So that is your dough that you need. You also spinach. I prefer the fresh bunch of spinach versus the spinach that comes in the bags. And with that, you'll need a strainer because we're going to rinse off the spinach and sort the bad leaves. A container of cottage cheese, 1 egg, a dash of salt, and for the finishing touches, you will need some sour cream and any type of heavy whipping cream. This is the baking dish I will be using, which it doesn't have to be glass. As long as you can create layers to stack in there, it should be good. So first I'll show you how to create the filling. Great, so as you see here, I have thoroughly rinsed my spinach leaves in the strainer with cold water and pre-sorted kind of the bad, almost kind of rotten looking leaves out of my bunch. So after you've let the spinach strain, a little bit of water is not a bad thing. Water cooks out. You will take your spinach leaves. This is how my mom taught me. Kind of pick through them, hold them together at the bunch. If some of these stems or the stems are too long, just break them off. You don't want that in your filling. So you have a decent sized bunch. Now you're going to fold it in half. Hold it with your index finger and your thumb and with a knife into your bowl for preparing the rest of your filling. You're going to slice it into smaller pieces like that. It doesn't have to be in any perfect size. If you like spinach chunky, it's fine. And you will do that for your entire bunch of spinach. There's also, like I said, multiple different types of pita. What I said that we're making today is zeljanica. Zelje is the other word for spinach, or the word for spinach in Bosnian. And there are also different variations. There's a potato pita. There's with potatoes and onions as the filling. There's also ground beef with onions. That is burek. And then you have sirnica, which is multiple different types of cheeses, or you can just use one cheese as your filling. I know there are also many other variations that other families have developed over the years, and there's different regions in Bosnia that some have maybe created a completely different filling, but the whole process is having the dough be handmade, stretched, which I'll show an example of that as well. Okay, so I have my spinach cleaned and cut up. You will take your cottage cheese. I use these smaller containers because it's enough for me. You can always add more. You can double the recipe by, getting 2 bunches of spinach, 2 containers, or if you don't like cheese, a little less. But I like to use almost all of it. That cheese will melt and kind of what creates the consistency. You will also put 1 egg just right in there, right on top. And then a teaspoon roughly a teaspoon of salt. That is one thing I've learned being Bosnian. We don't use real measurements a lot. It is just a look at how much you want. If you want it a little bit less, that's fine. If you want a little bit more saltiness and savory, everyone kind of tweaks their recipe to their liking. So I like 1 teaspoon of salt. We are now going to mix the cheese and the egg. So the egg will break once you start mixing. So if you started off with just a little bit of the cottage cheese and you realize you're not kind of getting a good dispersion of the cottage cheese throughout, go ahead and add some more. You don't want the filling to be dry, so I will actually add the rest of my container. Now that the filling is mixed, you can set that off to the side. And before we start rolling and putting together the dough and the filling, go ahead and preheat your oven to 425 to 450. That way you have time for your oven to heat up while you are assembling the pita. So depending on how your oven bakes is also the temperature. So as you see, this is the dough sheet that comes out of that package. It is a little bit thicker. So due to it being thick, you're able to kind of stretch it out, because pita, the traditional way of making it, the dough, you knead it together and it is a small ball. And then that ball is taken onto a counter space or a table and stretched out across the table, so it becomes very thin. You can have some holes appear, but it's okay. Once you roll it in, should be fine. All right. So here you'll see I have it stretched out. Make sure obviously that your counter space is clean to spread the dough out. Now once you have your dough stretched out and you're ready to start the next step, at any point you can do this, is you take some vegetable oil and grease your baking dish. And if you can see, it is not a large amount. And with your hands then spread it around. You don't want too much oil, so just a little bit, but use your hands to spread it to cover your pan. And then the remainder you'll have, wipe on your dough, it's okay. Next step now, we'll start adding the filling. So I'm taking my spoon, I'll show you here. You want to add the filling towards one end versus in the middle. So fill it pretty good amount. Since it is cheese and spinach, due to the heat, they melt and kind of decrease in size. Okay, so now what you're going to do is from one side, start rolling your dough in. So, got that covered roughly there. I'm actually going to cut there because I want to be able to make an extra roll. So cut just at the end because I will stretch out this other piece of dough. Okay. And with that, now you have your roll. Your pizza is going to be open at the end. You can just slightly pinch it. The dough will stick and close. And then the traditional shape is coiling it like so. And then that is what you will place in your dish. So now with the other piece, what I'm doing, that one did end up a little bit thicker. I could have stretched the dough out a little bit more just to get more pies put together, more pizzas. And again, filling towards closer to the edge of one side. And then roll again. Great, so I have stretched my second sheet of dough. There are 2 sheets in one box. So like I said, if you want to increase the amount that you're making, you can easily go ahead and double everything in your ingredients. Now this is the one thing that when it's made with dough from scratch in the traditional way, these rolls or coils there tends to be about 5 or 6 out of each knead of dough. So these rolls are actually, in Bosnian, are called kolo. So when you ask, you want a roll of pita, you ask kolo pite, hoću kolo pite. And again, this is just one way of making it. There's multiple ways of putting your filling into the dough and how you actually roll the dough and create different shapes. Traditionally, we use round pans, which these are what the round pans look like. They're round metal baking sheets, and almost every Bosnian household is going to have multiple of these in different sizes, and this is one that my mom got me. So I have my first little dish, which I like baking in the glass dishes. It makes the dough flakier. But this is from over in Bosnia. All right, so I have cut my dough sheet again in 2, and we'll be filling with the remainder of my filling on one end. So even though we're making this in a new variation, a quicker variation, it definitely still tastes exactly the same in making it the traditional way. There's a little bit variation due to the cheese here not being, you know, fresh farm cheese, and flour in the dough might be a little bit different back home. Oh, our oven is ready. So the time that I've spent here rolling the dough, the oven's ready to go. And if you ever do go to Bosnia, or you find yourself learning more about Bosnia, you'll find that pita is something you can pick up in the mornings, pre-made or already made by a local baker at the bakery. It is sold same places that bread is sold fresh in the mornings, because it is similar dough to what bread is. And this is my last coil. Great. So as you see here, here's my pan with my coils. I'll try to show it this way. Shouldn't slide too much. They can be packed in if you have a smaller pan. That's fine as well. And then you will take your oil. This is just my bottle of oil, and you will slightly drizzle some oil on top of each kola. That is then just kind of rub it across the dough evenly on the top, just to help it bake better and not dry out so much. Keeps the dough. All right. So with that, these go into the oven. And unfortunately, another aspect of Bosnian cooking that I've learned is there's not a set time, just like we don't have specific measurements. With traditional dishes, everyone has their own variation. So again, depending on your appliance, how your oven bakes, you need to keep an eye on it. I check every 5 minutes almost for about 20 minutes. While that's baking, you will go ahead and take your sour cream and heavy whipping cream. You'll make a small bowl of the topping. So this is what we call kaymak. Kaymak is sour cream, but because sour cream in the United States is a lot thicker than what we know as sour cream in Bosnia is, this is a variation my mom has done for years living here, is add heavy whipping cream, and then we will whisk those to kind of get the favored texture and a little bit more liquidy topping, because we want to have this spread evenly over our pitas at the end. So I'm just going to slowly whisk this together so that they become one. The sour cream is thick, so it'll take some whisking. Again, no measurements, it's by eye, so if you don't like sour cream, you don't have to make as much. You can do just a small amount. It just helps keep the pita, I want to say, from drying out as soon by just adding a coating. Now this pita, so Zeljanica, is one that calls for cheese. But when we make burek, which is the one with ground beef, or krompirusha, which is the one with potatoes, we don't do a cheese coating. So this cheese topping is paired with the spinach pita and the pita that's just cheese, which makes sense. Cheese with more cheese. So one thing that I also wanted to add is to check the bottom. So safely, you can take it out for a second and take a knife, a butter knife is fine, just to lift the dough and verify what it looks like from the bottom, because you want them up. This is perfect. So it is baking evenly underneath as well. Alright, so my pita is ready to come out. She is close to being very golden brown, as you can see. So now what we're going to do is, again, just a trick that and habit I was taught by my mom, is to check your pita again from the bottom. Make sure it's cooked all the way. Verify. And it has. And what you do now is you take the cream that we created earlier with the sour cream, and we are going to drizzle, or more so cover, the top of the pita with them. So nothing intricate, there's no design to it, just use up your coating, and kind of like to spread it out so it covers the top of the dough evenly, because like I said, it helps keep the pita from drying out. Once it's out of the oven and done, I think it preserves the softness of the dough from going stale, because this is something, again, like I said, traditionally when you're making it with the large dough from scratch, it will make an ample amount of pita, which in my household, or with my family growing up, would be food for about 2 days, because it would feed many. So now that we've covered that with the topping, we're actually going to put it back in the oven for another 5 minutes, just for the cheese itself to also kind of melt into the dough. Again, something to keep your eyes on for. So 5 minutes, just till you see that the topping is melted and more so warmed up with the actual temperature of the pita itself. So now you'll see when you cut into it, your spinach and cheese, which has melted, is in there. What we like to eat it with or serve with is plain Greek yogurt. Is a good substitute to the equivalents of the homemade yogurt from back home on the farms, what people typically make at home as well, or a fresh salad with tomatoes and cucumbers, which all these sides go great with every different type of pita. So I hope you get a chance to buy these ingredients to be able to create this recipe yourself. And with that, I say prijatno I ciao.